to the man who's in Flushing, Queens right now himself, Sam Davis, WFUV's Mets beat reporter. First of all, Sam, what's going on? It's great to see you again. Tell us a little bit what's going on right now in Queens.
What's going on, guys? Glad to be here. A lot just went down in that fifth inning. I was rushing over from watching the game here to be with you guys, but the Mets loaded the bases, and it looked like the inning was over, and the Mets were going to strand even more base runners and would be down 1-0 in this game. But Chris Bryant made a huge throwing error, and the Mets did tie the game at 1. Taijuan Walker's been tremendous so far. He made one mistake, which was a Chris Bryant homer. So the score is tied at 1 right now. I don't know. It feels like every night is kind of a must win with the way the Mets have been playing lately, but certainly they caught a break there. Let's see if they can capitalize on it.
And Sam, I want to kind of follow up with Taijuan Walker. I think he's the physical embodiment of what the Mets season has been. I remember telling you that he should be an all-star, and well, he rightfully deserved it in that first half of the year. And now here they come, these Mets with Walker. I mean, of course, being the lead guy, because DeGrom's been hurt on and off all year, and the injury bug has struck again. It seems every year with this team at this point. It's almost like a holiday. But there's so many pieces that have just fallen off. And do you think at any point this year they can somewhat salvage what they've lost, or do you think this is just move on to the next season? We're playing for the off season.
I'm really close to saying it's to move on to next year. I'm just about there. Especially nights like yesterday where they lose 8-0. Being at those games, as much as it's a pleasure to cover the Mets with WFUV, those games are not fun, and they're certainly aren't fun for the players either. But I'm getting there. I mean, DeGrom did throw today, so he was cleared to do that for the first time in a long time. So he may come back. I'm not really sure. It depends on a lot of things. It's going to depend on his health, first of all, and it's also going to depend on if the Mets are still in it or even close to in it come mid-September, when is the earliest he could be eligible to come off the IL. So who knows if he'll be back. I'm trending towards probably not. And yeah, I mean, that's a huge loss. But I think when DeGrom goes down and you're starting to see maybe some inconsistencies with the starting pitching, Walker's been better, but has been a little inconsistent in the second half. It's showing the real problem with this team, which is the lineup. It's showing the real issue, which is this offense not producing with runners in scoring position. I wrote down, and I wanted to bring it here because this is an incredible stat. Since the All-Star break, they are 203. Hitting 203. They're 59 for 290 with runners in scoring position since the All-Star break. So that is just awful. And that kind of just shows one of the big problems. And they're kind of just, their approach has been off. And I just think this offense, sorry to sound off, but the offense has been seriously the issue. And I think some of the injuries are kind of showing that even more.
And staying with the offense, Sam, you get Lindor back. Do you see him as is he the last hope for this Mets team? Because you saw in his absence that lackluster would be an understatement for the production. As you mentioned, especially with runners in scoring position for this Mets team, is even with Lindor back, is he going to right the ship? Are the bats going to finally wake up and, the Mets maybe be able to make a push? Or do you see him? I mean, he's not having a record breaking year. Do you see him contributing to the success, hopefully, or just contributing to the continually stagnant Mets offense?
Well, I mean, there is something to be said about Lindor's presence, and I don't think it's a full coincidence that when Lindor left and was hurt, I mean, the Mets offense became way worse. So I think, he certainly hasn't had a great year, but he does bring a very good presence to this team that I think they kind of rally around. And yesterday, that game when Lindor and Baez were up the middle for the first time since the trade, there was tons of optimism and excitement around, okay, this is maybe the point where the Mets turn things around. This is they're playing a good Giants team to start a series, and they go out and lose 8-0. And I mean, Lindor's not in the lineup tonight because he needs to be kind of eased back in because he didn't have a rehab start. So I don't know. I really don't think it's all on Lindor. It's a ton of guys in this lineup that just haven't produced. I mean, Jeff McNeil hasn't produced. Dom Smith hasn't produced. Conforto's been super up and down. I mean, you go down the list, there's really, other than Brandon Nimmo and Pete Alonso, this lineup has just been extremely inconsistent and not producing to the level that you would have expected out of this team this year, which is really frustrating. I mean, especially games like we've seen, during this stretch, they played the Giants and Dodgers, and they've gone 2-9. If they lose tonight, they'll go 2-10 in that stretch. And the issue and the frustration is that most of these games are close games. Most of these games are 1 and 2 run losses where the Mets score 2 or 3 runs and lose. And I think that makes it even more frustrating because it shows that the Mets can hang around and beat good teams like the Giants and Dodgers, or at least hang around with those teams. They just can't beat them because they can't get a big hit, or the offense just doesn't really show up most of these nights. So, I mean, that's certainly the most frustrating part, but it's not all on Lindor. I mean, maybe he helps, but I'm starting to get a little pessimistic, to say the least, that things will turn around with him back in the lineup.
And Sam, you brought up Javi Baez, El Mago, who is, when he's focused, one of the most entertaining players in baseball. I don't think we can debate that. But Keenan, you can jump in on this too. There's a lot of blame to go around with how this Mets season has kind of unfolded, I guess, is the question I'm going at. Between Baez being a disappointment, I would say I think where they really failed was under-signing in the offseason. Other than the Lindor trade, if you took that away, this Mets offseason was very, very plain. It was very boring, and it didn't really move the needle. And you guys, I want you both to kind of look in the crystal ball, sort of distant-ish future. What do the Mets do? I mean, in terms of transactions, because they need to address a lot of things. And I mean, start with Baez, I don't even know if re-signing him is going to be worth it.
Yeah, I don't know if that's going to happen. I mean, with what he's shown so far this year, I don't think. The bottom line is that it's interesting because I think Steve Cohen is certainly not pleased with what he's seeing from this team, and that's been evident with his tweets and evident with, I'm sure the way he feels watching the Mets every night. So something is going to happen. I don't think Baez is the answer. I mean, I always thought, I know Chris Bryant tonight. It's funny. I mean, he did make a big error, but he also hit a home run for the Giants to give them the lead, and he's crushed. I mean, he's hit tons. I think 3 out of the 5 homers he's hit with the Giants have been against the Mets. And Chris Bryant was a guy that the Mets could have gotten the offseason and very well might go out and get over this next offseason, as he'll be a free agent. They could have gotten him at the deadline. They chose not to. They went with the Javi Baez direction, which I certainly was not a huge fan of. But I mean, I think things are going to change. A lot's going to happen. It's going to, start in the front office. It's going to start, there's certainly questions around Zach Scott. There's certainly questions around Rojas, and then going down the list to just improving this offense. I think that's the key. I mean, you re-sign Stroman. That's a big move that they really should go out and make. He's been really good, consistent for the Mets. But with the lineup, something's got to happen, and it's got to happen this offseason for sure.
And before you leave, Sam, just real quick. So obviously the Mets had a tough schedule playing the Dodgers and the Giants in what was 4 consecutive series, going Dodgers, Giants. Tough for any team in the MLB, really. But then they kind of get their foot off the gas a little bit. They get to play like the Fish, the Marlins, that is, and then the Nationals. Is there anything from like a Mets front office perspective that you could see that you're looking for in these end of the season games? Are you looking for guys that are grinders that are going to willing to fight? Or are you already kind of in we're probably done, scrap the season, who are we going to keep around and whose trade value is going up?
I think the Mets are still fully in. I really do. That's the vibe I get from everyone. I was able to talk before the game with Luis Rojas, the manager, for a minute, and he told me that, I mean, like, the mentality of the clubhouse is really even keeled, and it's something he's preached all year and kind of talked about, and just taking it night by night. So for them, I think they still believe they're in it. They still believe that it's not too late and they can turn things around. But there's certainly a huge sense of urgency with that, especially with only a month left. So I think they're just going to keep trying to push out the best lineups that they can each night and see what happens.